We spend our lives chasing certainty. But the more tightly we cling to it, the more anxious we become. You plan, you prepare, you try to control. And yet, peace never arrives. It's a trap we rarely notice. Our search for security is the very thing that makes us feel insecure. This is the hidden pattern Alan Watts unravels in The Wisdom of Insecurity, a lens that explains why life so often feels just out of reach. Welcome to Beyond the Books. Let's step into the clarity you've been missing. The Wisdom of Insecurity. Alan Watts. Life is always happening, right now. And yet, most of us are rarely here for it. Alan Watts, in The Wisdom of Insecurity, points to a truth that quietly drives our suffering. We are constantly trying to lock life into certainty, while life itself is permanently unpredictable. We keep searching for a solid place to stand, a moment where everything is guaranteed, safe, and unchanging. But the very act of grasping pulls us out of the only place we can ever truly live. This present moment. Think about your own life. When you feel restless, when anxiety hums in the background, when you scroll through your phone without really seeing anything, it's almost always because your mind is leaning into a future that hasn't happened, or replaying a past you can't change. Meanwhile, life goes on without you. You're physically here, but emotionally elsewhere. Most of us live as if the present is just an obstacle, a bridge we must cross to reach the future, where we imagine we'll finally feel safe. Watts begins with an observation that feels painfully true. We are a species obsessed with security. We build our days around plans and protections. We try to freeze our identities in place. This is who I am. This is the life I will have. These are the people who will stay with me. This is how it all will go. But the more tightly we hold, the more fragile life feels. Even the smallest disruption, a delay, a rejection, an unexpected expense, can shatter the illusion. Take a simple example. You plan a vacation months in advance. Pick the perfect destination. Book the hotel. Count down the days like they're a secret source of future happiness. Then, a week before, you see the weather forecast. Rain. Immediately, stress replaces joy. The trip hasn't even begun, and it already feels threatened. Why? Because your mind secretly signed a contract. This trip will only be worth it if it matches the picture in my head. But reality? Reality doesn't sign contracts. Expectations turn even our happiest dreams into fragile glass we're afraid to drop. This is the first layer of Watts's insight. Security is a story the mind tells itself. We think constant control will protect us. But the act of control, this endless managing, predicting, rehearsing, is the very thing that creates the anxiety we're trying to prevent. The tighter the grip, the shakier the hand feels. Here's the part most people never see. The search for security is the engine of insecurity. The more you demand a future where nothing can go wrong, the more you reinforce the feeling that the present isn't enough. That gap between the life you're living and the life you're insisting on is where anxiety grows. Anxiety lives in the space between how life is and how we think it should be. And this isn't just personal, it's cultural. Modern life runs on the promise of someday. Someday, when you have the right job. Someday, when you reach the right status. Someday, when you finally fix yourself, then you'll get to relax. But here's the trap. Each time you reach a goal, the horizon moves. Your mind invents a new someday to chase. You never arrive. You only sprint in circles with your eyes on the future. Watts calls this the backward law of security. The more you demand certainty, the less secure you feel. It's like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The harder you squeeze, the faster it slips away. And yet, we carry this habit everywhere, even into our spiritual lives. Many turn to religion or personal growth with a hidden bargain. I need proof I'll be okay. I need to know life will turn out the way I want. But the deeper teachings, across philosophies and faiths, don't promise safety through prediction. They point to something far more radical. Peace comes not from knowing the future, but from fully showing up to the present. True peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from presence. Watts draws a piercing distinction. There is life, and there is our idea of life. Most of us live inside the idea. We carry a mental map: who we are, what will keep us safe, how the day is supposed to unfold. But the map is never the territory. When life violates the map, a breakup, a job loss, a random inconvenience, we don't just face the event. We face the collapse of the story we told ourselves. Picture this. You wake up on a Monday. Your mind is already half in the future. Meetings, emails, errands, dinner, bed. Then, your car won't start. Instant tension. It's not just the inconvenience. It's that reality broke the script. Your sense of control was built on an invisible expectation. Stress often comes from life refusing to follow the script we secretly wrote for it. This is the invisible trap Watts reveals. Life is not a fixed script. It is a flowing, unpredictable process. And when we demand it obey our expectations, we create the friction we call suffering. The deeper truth, the present moment, is the only reality, and it can never be fully controlled. But something changes when we practice letting go. When we allow life to unfold without gripping so hard, the anxiety of what if begins to dissolve. Because we are no longer living in the gap between imagination and experience. Watts calls this the wisdom of insecurity. Real safety is not the absence of change. It is the willingness to move with change, to trust the rhythm of life, even when we cannot predict the next beat. Why does this work? Psychologically, anxiety thrives on the gap between two loops. 1. The loop of experience. What is actually happening? 2. The loop of imagination. What the mind insists should be happening. The wider the gap, the heavier life feels. When we let go of the demand for certainty, we collapse the gap. Experience and imagination align. Here, now. Of course, the modern mind resists this. We are taught that control equals safety. We hustle for goals, secure assets, over-prepare. And yet, no matter how much we control the outside, the inside remains unsettled. Because the mind can always invent a new threat, a new what if, a new scenario to defend against. A life built on control can never rest, because the mind can always find something else to protect. So, how do we live this wisdom? It begins with a small experiment in attention. The next time anxiety rises, pause. Notice the story in your head. Ask yourself, is this happening, or am I imagining it? Most of the time, the pain exists in a future that isn't here yet, or a past that can't be changed. In that noticing, even for a moment, you'll return to the only place that is truly safe. Now. Watts even applies this to our deepest fear: death. So much existential anxiety comes from trying to secure life against its inevitable end. We cling to permanence like it's a life raft. But here is the paradox. By resisting death, we resist life. When we accept impermanence, when we recognize that each moment is fleeting, life becomes vivid. Every experience becomes precious, precisely because it cannot be repeated. The fragility of life is not a flaw. It is the reason life feels alive. And here is the final insight. Insecurity is not a mistake in the design of life. It is the design. Change is the pulse that makes every moment real. When we stop demanding guarantees, we discover a safety that doesn't depend on control, but on connection. At the surface, we try to feel safe by tightening our grip. We attempt to control circumstances. Control leads to attachment. Attachment leads to expectation. Expectation leads to friction. Friction leads to anxiety. Our reaction? We grip harder. The cycle feeds itself. But when we flip the script, when we allow uncertainty to exist without fighting it, we stop adding layers of tension. Life becomes lighter, more immediate, more real. This is the wisdom of insecurity. Not a theory, but a lived experience of meeting life as it is, instead of how we demand it to be. Here is the final realization. Security was never about locking life in place. It was always about our relationship to the present. The moment you stop asking life to promise you a future, life itself becomes the promise. Because you are finally here to live it. The only guarantee life will ever give you is the chance to be here for it. When you stop chasing certainty, life stops running from you. Right now, pause. Name out loud one moment today you will enter fully, without trying to control it. Comment that moment below. Let it be your first step into presence. Like this video, subscribe to Beyond the Books. And if there's a book you want us to unlock next, tell us in the comments. Live here. Begin now.